to building trust. By blocks, I mean things that actually get in our way. Yours and mine, every human being's way. The personal blocks include those things. I'm not going to read them to you. You can certainly read them. But what I do want you to do is I want you to think about your own self right now. And I want you to pick one of those bullets that you think applies to you. Which one very strongly applies to you as a factor that gets in your way of trusting others? Now, there might be several that you see for yourself up there, but I want you to get in touch with the big one. Which one is like really you? And do we have any brave soul who is willing to share?
So you're saying what are the blockers?
Things that stand in your way of trusting.
I would say employment experiences. I mean, being in HR,
Okay.
you deal with a lot of every kind of different employee.
Right.
And definitely the things that I've experienced would affect, I mean, it would affect that. I've learned my lesson.
Okay, and that is in your brain now, right? And it always comes to the surface in the next situation, in the next scenario. You draw upon that. So that's an example of how stuff gets in our way. I'd like to hear one other person share from that list. Something you wouldn't mind sharing.
I actually just have a question.
Yes, please.
What do you mean by the last bullet? Lack of self-trust.
Oh, self-trust. What is self-trust? Yeah, I had to put that up there. And I'm glad you particularly noticed it. What is self-trust? That's part of it. Self-trust is how much do you actually trust yourself? Trust yourself to be intelligent enough to do your work. Trust yourself to be resourceful. Trust yourself to get the job done on time. Trust yourself to be able to do whatever it takes. You know, we could go on and on and on. But self-trust is how much do you actually trust yourself to X, Y, or Z. Does that help? And we're certainly not going to take a poll in here, but I want you to think about that now that this was highlighted for us. Remember that good old scale of 1 to 10 a few moments ago, with 10 being the highest rating? In the privacy of your mind, attach a number for your own level of self-trust. I'm not going to ask anybody to share, but I just want you to get in touch with that number secretly in your own head. What number are you attaching to your own level of self-trust? To what extent do you trust yourself? Is it an 8? If it's an 8, you know what? That's great. More power to you. I applaud you. But if in the privacy of your mind it is like a 4 or a 5 or a 6, then my question to you, and of course because I'm a coach I have to ask it this way, what do you need to do to bump that score of a 5 up to a 7, for example? What has to happen? What do you think needs to happen to bump that score from a 5 to a 7? That's my coaching question for you. Now, there are also organizational blocks to building trust. So not only do we ourselves as human beings carry a lot of baggage as individuals, but our organization will oftentimes stand in the way of building trust, or of allowing us to build and create an environment that has optimal high trust. What do we need to talk about there? And again, I want you to relate this to your own company or organization. Which one of those bullets is representative most of your company right now? Which one is standing in their way of being able to enjoy an environment of high productive trust? Do we need to talk about anything there? Yes.
Sorry.
No, you go right ahead.
I'll make a comment, and this isn't so much
Please.
the company's problem, but I think an HR
Okay. Sure.
issue is that we rely so heavily on processes, procedures, and policies. Your last
Yes,
bullet
you do.
there. We in our industry or our training, we know that we have to follow things, document things,
Yes.
whatever, because of legal issues or whatever. So, for example, a manager can't just come to me and say, I need to hire such and such, it's always, do you have the appropriate approvals? You know, who has signed off on this? What is, you know, we put that on ourselves, those blocks. We can't just trust them that, as a manager, they know that they have the authority to do this.
Thank you so much for sharing. She made herself vulnerable by sharing that, but I think others of you in the room can relate that that last bullet does in fact often stand in our way. Does anybody need to talk about something else that's up there? All right, if not, we're moving on. Now, I'm sure you've seen this before, but I would be remiss if I did not include this slide because I personally believe it. Why? Because I've seen it over and over again. I've seen this be true, but I've seen the opposite of that be true. Where if there is a lack of trust in your top leadership, meaning the C-suite, the business owner, the CEO, a couple of vice presidents, you know, whoever it is, the executive director, whatever the person's title is at the top, and the people who immediately surround him or her, if the trust there is low, and there is a lack of interest in developing trust at that top level, you can't possibly have a really viable lifeblood of trust flowing through your organization. It's just utterly impossible.